أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا رسول الله. In the name of Allah, the omnipotent, the omnipresent, most merciful, most benevolent, most forgiving. Let me make it very clear that we are not against going for elections in principle. Election is a constitutional requirement. Part of the reason for our existence as a political entity is to secure public mandate through elections to assume authority over national governance infrastructure. President Jammeh's tenure will expire this year, inshallah. Therefore, to avert constitutional crisis from enveloping our nation, Gambians must decide this year who should govern our country from the 19th January 2017 to 18th January 2022. We must conduct presidential elections this year without fail. However, owing to facts I explain later, briefly, we do not believe it is wise for any member of G6 to take unilateral actions that have the capacity to build uncertainty among the polity, weaken our collective resolve, or undermine the search for unity. The unilateral declaration of presidential candidature without consultations with G6 members gravely undermine our joint efforts for both electoral reforms and a consensus for united opposition candidature. With this unwise and surprising move, the consultative mechanisms created thereunder and negotiated processes for consensus candidate have been severely compromised. It is important for you to be informed about the political engagements and consultations the opposition had involved in the pursuit of a common position in the recent past. I am going to share with you some documents. Now, pursuant to the 2011 presidential elections, all opposition parties came together to make a diagnosis as to what went right and what went wrong. And we all came to the conclusion that there were fatal, very fundamental flaws impacting the election system, the electoral system, that ought to be rectified if we have to have credible elections in the country. And that is what gave birth to G6. We came together and signed a memorandum and sent a set of demands to the IEC, including the government, that these demands must be looked into prior to the parliamentary elections of 2012. Because these demands were not considered as propitious by the IEC, we felt our hands were tied, and as a result, the opposition parties, save but one, did not contest elections in 2012 under the parliamentary process. Now, we made a joint declaration that all of us signed on the 28th of February 2012. This joint declaration was signed by all political parties, and we have on page 4 of this document, starting from page 3, that all of us signed, G6 members, and I quote from page 3, that despite the expression of our wish for genuine elections over the years, the utilization of state resources and the media to expand and consolidate the supremacy of the ruling party has ever been extended to promote a monarchical political culture in gross subversion of the Republican Constitution, thus pushing the country steadily towards a de facto one-party state and the projection of the opposition as an obstacle to national development, while cajoling it whenever it is deemed advantageous to go to elections, with its hands and feet tied by refusing to undertake the palliatives of reforms. That the opposition has been pushed into a vicious corner to either boycotting elections and be damned, or participate in elections and be damned, and caught in this loss situation, it would be disingenuous to continue to contest every election with our hands and feet tied and then come out complaining of electoral misconduct. This is our common position in 2012, why we didn't go for elections. And we resolve therein to stand to demand that the IEC and the ruling party put an end to the conditions which prevent us from being a viable opposition and exclude us from participating in genuine elections, and to further elaborate on the factors which ought to be put in place by the ruling party and the IEC to ensure the holding of genuine elections that are fit to ensure our inclusion. And we went ahead to say that we'll utilize every legal means at our disposal to ensure that henceforth genuine elections are held in the Gambia if the dictates of the Constitution and the election laws are held in contempt and ignored with impunity. This was what we signed on to each other on the 28th of February 2012. All of us inclusive. Now, when we sent this to the IEC, our common position was that unless we secure comprehensive electoral reforms, elections is a waste of time. Because we knew what happened is going to happen again. We are going to entrench a de facto one-party state as we indicated in our document, G6 document. Now, we complied with this commitment in 2012. We didn't go for parliamentary elections because we did not secure elections. Did the conditions change? Surprisingly, we got a reply from the IEC. Since the 28th of February, the IEC decided to wait until March 5th when it responded to our demands in writing. And in this, the IEC stated, and I'm going to say in this first paragraph, the letter of the 5th of March. The Commission should always, as is expected by constitutional dictates, promote a free, fair, and transparent electoral process, and in so doing, persevere to facilitate a leveling of the playing field for all stakeholders in the process. They admitted their shortcomings, and they committed themselves to leveling the playing field for all stakeholders in compliance with their constitutional mandate. Not only that, they went ahead to say that they will activate a monitoring unit with respect to access to public media, that is taxpayer media. Now, in this, the IEC went ahead, in effect, while accepting that there need to be reforms, they are not going to comply with the demands, and that they went ahead and organized parliamentary elections in 2012. So, even though the Commission on page 4 of its reply to us, and I read, acknowledge that the Commission has repeatedly expressed that elections are a sovereign right of the people, and these rights include supporting any candidate of their choice morally, financially, and of course, through casting ballots. It is stated very clearly in their reply that the points we raised are very pertinent, they're very relevant, and they are serious. And their reply was very unserious. Nothing changed, we continued. We didn't stop there. Thereabout, we again negotiated, see if we can have an arbiter between us, the opposition on one side, the IRC and the government. And so we approached the Reverend Jesse Jackson to mediate in order to bring about, a solution to the impasse that we have in our political situation. And so, this letter that we sent, we created a new system to Reverend Jesse Jackson, dated 18 November 2012, of the same year that parliament elections were held and that our demands were denied by the IUC. We wrote to Reverend Jesse Jackson on the 18th, and Reverend Jesse Jackson replied on the 15th of December. He wrote back, accepting a mediation role between the opposition, the Gambia government, and the IUC. As he says, I accept the unanimous decision to assist, and I will do my utmost in engaging the governing party and the opposition to advance fundamental principles of democracy in the Gambia. I attach great importance with regards to freedom, tolerance, and an open and free political environment with a credible level playing field. That was the bone of contention, a credible level playing field. Unfortunately, there was no traction in this mediation process. While we were ready to move ahead, the government and the IUC were moving backwards. We could not make any success with these efforts. And then we continued with the process to engage ECOWAS, and individually on our own political parties, we took up measures. We had meetings, we conducted tremendous diplomacy in order to bring all parties on the table so that we can resolve through national political dialogue and give Gambian people a democracy that they deserve. All through this period, we had periodic consultations among all the political parties. And we even had joint political campaigns at some point. We created again another document, and this time was the 11th of May 2015. This is opposition parties' proposals and demands for electoral and constitutional reform in the Gambia. We call it OPPD FECR. This document, the opposition collectively combined, prepared, once again to present to the IEC and the government so that we can open another process, another avenue, where we can sit down and resolve this irritating issue of credible elections and reforms in the process. These demands have been signed by all of us. As you will see, this was executed on the 11th of May 2011. All of the opposition political parties signed, all 6 opposition political parties that are active in the opposition political process, all of us signed. Myself and my other colleagues, we all signed this document, and this document was forwarded to the IEC again as a basis, a working document, to critically look at our electoral laws, working together in partnership, both sides, the opposition, the governing sides, and the IEC as the umpire, so that we can give Gambians the democracy that they deserve. On the same day, we also prepared a press release in order to inform Gambians what is contained in this document. And we itemized them. This was released again, and all opposition parties again signed this document for public release. We continued. What do we have? Instead of consulting us to amend the electoral laws, the IEC kept quiet without responding to our 11th May 2015 demands for new negotiations to prepare effectively so we can have everything in place before 2016 would even dawn upon us. This was all the way back in May in 2015. Less than half a year into last year, this was supposed to have been effected. Unfortunately, we didn't make traction again. The IEC kept mute. It worked together with the ruling party, and they brought us the amendment that we witnessed a few months back. That now, instead of expanding the democratic space, further constricted and tied our hands. So, let me take you back once again to our MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, that G6 signed, that gave back to this, in which we committed ourselves not to go for elections if we do not secure credible elections. Did anything change? Yes, something changed, but for the worst, because instead of responding to our demands to create a level playing field, the rug was pulled from under our feet again through a more draconian electoral amendment that set to seek to consolidate the hold of dictatorship on our land, giving every advantage to the APRC even before we go to the polls. The amendment ensured that the election would be in favor of the APRC, as all indications are there. But because G6 did not implement its major commitment, and that is to say, to utilize every legal means at our disposal to ensure that henceforth, without credible elections, nothing will happen. Every legal means at our disposal is very wide. It means resorting to both domestic and international legal jurisdictions. It means resorting to international instruments. It means engaging the international community to actively come in and look at the Gambian situation, including regional organizations such as ECOWAS and the African Union. It means getting Gambians to come out legitimately into the streets and leading them in peaceful mass protests to sensitize the nation about the inequities contained in our electoral laws. All these are legitimate moves, and many more. Did we engage in these things? The problem we have is not that we do not have solutions to these problems. And I'll tell you, my gut feeling is this. Implementing our commitments and our decisions is the bane of G6. Like most organizations, we are very good at bringing out proposals, but we are terrible in terms of implementation. The bureaucracy, the internal bureaucracy itself, the pedagogical approach that some of our colleagues bring into every discussion that should require 10 minutes or 15 minutes consensus will take us weeks to come into a simple agreement. These are things that you ought to know because we represent you and you need to know some of the constraints that beset simple decisions we should take. Therefore, because we did not follow through with some of the legal avenues we have, not only judicial, but also using our political clouds and our numerical strength on the ground to bear brunt on the situation in order to compel a sea change in the attitude of the government, what we have seen is a consolidation of the restriction of the democratic space instead of expanding it. Now, the conflict between us and President Jammeh is not about holding elections this year. All sides are in agreement on that. The conflict between us and the APRC, together with IC on one side, is about holding credible elections versus fraudulent elections. That is the bone of contention between us. On one side, and the President and IC on the other. This is not a new conflict. It was there even before GMC was established, and I would come into public policy, into politics. Let me share with you some of the anomalies that we indicated. The age limit, for example, it was there. Now, all these traditional opposition parties, the PPP, the UDP, the NRP, DOI, all of them contested, even though the age limit restriction was there. But at the time, it did not catch up with them, so it was not the main issue. Did they do anything about it? Your guess is as good as mine. The residential requirement that says you living in the diaspora cannot vote and cannot be candidates was there. From 1996 to 2001 elections, to 2006 elections, the 2011 elections, these obnoxious provisions have been there, even before we would come into politics, before GMC was created. Did anything happen? Because they all live in the country, nothing happened about it. And you living in the diaspora did not also make it as an issue. So President Jammeh went to get away with that as well. And then we now come to the obnoxious, what is called the attestation. Now, this is the sorest way of losing an election. Because in the law, power is given to any four elders in any village, any town, any settlement, any community in the Gambia. Any four elders can come forward and certify on a handwritten paper that Mr. or Miss A is a citizen of this village. And with that simple handwritten paper alone, the individual whose name is indicated can go straight to the polling booth. He will be given a marble and he can cast a ballot. He can go and vote without any biometric or any paper identification, any picture identification. This has been there. Has it been a major issue? Perhaps. Did anything happen about it? From 1996 elections, 2001 elections, 2006 elections, 2011 elections, all of these parties, PPP, UDP, DOI, NRP, contested elections, these things have been there. President Jammeh continued to survive with it. Nothing happened. So every new election cycle, things are there, that should be fought, that elections should not go on without them being resolved, and they get brushed over, and he get more emboldened the next time. I am not apportioning blame. I am saying that we have not done what we should do. If we have taken the bull by the horn at the right time, this man cannot get away with all these things. But now, we are fighting for this attestation form, this simple handwritten attestation that can be given to anybody to go and vote. But yet again, this attestation form has been reinforced in the new amendment. It is there. So, we also talked about amending the term limit because that was very clear in the law. We wanted it to be restored. And again, it was quite easy for President Jammeh to go ahead. 50 plus 1 previously was not possible. That is one. Another thing is the term limit. It was also removed after an election in which President Jammeh secured only 53%. That 53% in fact was not genuine. And then was anybody who passed the goal post first. So we have these issues, and these issues ought to be done. Then now we come to the enforcement of Section 208, that is access to public facilities, is contained in the Constitution. Section 41 also provide access to that. And Section 208 has to do with the radio and TV and so forth. All these things must be enforced. And none of them have been enforced, even though the IEC, in its reply to us on March 5th, indicated clearly that they know that the Commission must comply with the electoral laws of the land. Section 208 is one such thing that says we have to have access to all public information dissemination systems. But has it been enforced, even though IEC put it in writing? No. If we do not make them enforce it, they're not going to do that. And this is why, when we felt that a political party who is a member of G6 made a declaration of its candidature, we felt that this is going to undermine further our collective resolve to fight these anomalies. Every political party is sovereign and you have the right to do so. We are not questioning their right to do that. What we are saying that morally it does not help us. The most important question you should ask yourself is, what have you as a sovereign Gambian citizen been doing about these anomalies? Besides expecting the opposition leaders to sort it out for you. What are you going to do about this now, besides complaining around yourself, about yourself, and on yourself? Challenging as it may seem, let me assure you that these are not issues we cannot fight and win together. These are not issues that we can fight together and lost. We can win this campaign if we work as a team, complementing our strength and empowering each other. Yes, it is possible. So my friends, make a vow today that you shall join us and encourage your friends, colleagues, relatives, and others to join in the practical efforts to end the over two decades of irresponsible leadership in our land. Make that commitment to yourself, and beyond that, take all necessary actions to bring into effect this commitment. And I assure you that together, we will find it as so much easier than ever imagined. Yes, it's possible.